Let's get started. 25 minutes after an hour, we got Joseph Lee. You see the flyer I sent out yesterday?
I didn't get a chance to see it.
I saw when you look at it, I sort of jazz it up a little bit.
Okay, all right. I'll check it out.
I am getting ready. I got a background and I know where it's coming from. There we go. Okay. The previous interviews we had, I had callers let me know that there was a bad echo. So I think we got that resolved. So, but anyway, Joseph, how's everything going?
Everything is going good. Except, the heat down here is definitely getting my attention. 105, 104, 108. We seem to be getting all the heat, down here. So,
yeah, I think that's getting everybody's attention.
Oh, yeah. Global warming doesn't exist, right?
It is real.
It is to some to notice, maybe not, right?
I am just trying to. I got rid of it. Okay. All right, Joseph. So what did we leave off last week?
Well, I think we said we were going to talk about San Antonio a little bit last week. I think we were talking about, we'll probably talk a little bit more about today, which is, politics and the ongoing January 6th investigation and how that's relative to our country's mindset. I think we're talking about mindsets a little bit and what needs to be changed last week. So, and also we had talked about getting some questions, thank you to all the listeners that have spiked. We've got 400 new listeners, since you started this segment and the segment that follows. So, want to thank the listeners for taking the time to just kind of listen and want to hear from them, what kind of questions that they have and, want to see where they would like to, kind of take the show in a sense. I
did get a couple questions that came in, and a couple was pretty interesting.
Okay.
I'm gonna share with you one. I'm gonna share with you one now.
Okay.
This lady by the name of Elizabeth, she says she want to start homeschooling for what's going on out there in the world right now, but she's scared no interaction with other kids may do other harm to her child. So how does she go about that homeschooling without interaction with kids?
Mm-hmm. Well, homeschooling, and that's one of the things that, I've been doing for the past couple of years, myself, with my daughter. And there's a huge homeschool community, of people that have that same issue with wondering about what's going on with their kids in terms of social skills and social opportunities. But a lot of people don't know, for kids that are homeschooled, there's now with COVID restrictions, going down, there's a lot of social opportunities, just as many social opportunities as there are for kids in other brick and mortar type schools. So they've got sports and, drama and all kind of, things that you can do to kind of help foster those social skills. But it is an issue, and it is something that's going to take some extra focus to make sure that you have, a child have decent social opportunities to develop and to get out and do things that more traditional brick and mortar type schools have. So something to think about. And if you don't have the time to go to those additional social outlets, that could be an issue. All right. So I think homeschooling is logical in a lot of ways for those that can pull that off. My wife works from home. I can work from home occasionally, and I'm very close to where I work. So then, my office, I have an office here at the house. I have an office where I work, so we're able to manage that for our child. So I think it's a matter of, can you do it? Number one, which if you can, you just have to look for those social outlets and opportunities so that your child has that balance. So,
Yeah,
mhm.
I hear you on that one right there, because that's sort of parents are stuck. They don't know what to do and
Yeah.
how they go about it. There we go. That's better. So, wow. Um, I brought up a point the other day that I said we're gonna have a shortage of teachers. And sure enough, the news report came on and said that a lot of teachers are gonna retire early for what's going on.
Yeah. You know, I don't know where I saw it, but I think Arizona, where they're showing teachers that are going through combat training drills. So we're expecting the teachers to teach our kids, a lot of times counsel our kids, now protect our kids, uh, you know, with the pay that they get. And yeah, I think that's a lot. I think it's just a lot going on. It just is a sign of the times that we now have to think about arming our teachers. And, you
Yeah,
know, we really need to look at our educational system and see how we can help our teachers out a little more with decent legislation, so they don't have to be security, law enforcement, educator, and sometimes parent and counselor all at the same time with the pay that they're getting. My hat goes off to teachers, and there's a special place in my heart for teachers, considering that I used to teach, and you know, to have so many friends that are educators. So it's a scary situation. For
it
sure.
is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which are pushing a lot of them out the door. So
see, now I remember years ago when I was teaching, they came up with this TCAT test that all teachers had to take. And they thought that being a teacher was lifetime. You didn't have to do anything. But the great state of Texas came up with a TCAT test, and a lot of teachers left then because they was testing them. And this is what it was. The test they took went to somebody in the Midwest, and it was a written test, and it went by how they wrote things that I'm trying to say. And if they felt it wasn't written the right way, they weren't eligible to be a teacher. So demographics have a lot to do with that. What's happening in Texas and the way things go on in Texas may not be the same way in New York. And so they have people grading the test out of their region. And a lot of teachers got upset and they left the teaching field then.
well, there's definitely educational and test bias out there. I'm not sure how a test can really dictate, you know, how a teacher is going to teach. But I think if you choose to go into the profession and you are ethically, morally sound and have, you know, the correct education and the passion to teach our kids, I'm all for it, you know, but you have to get your license. You have to do what you need to do. And then I think we need those different perspectives, you know, to teach our children, because our world has those different perspectives, right? So, but I think one of the things that I think we've gotten away from, which I think is part of the problem, is that, remember, there used to be a time where our teachers were from the community that
Right.
they were teaching in. And, you know, I know when I came up, you know, when I was younger, a lot of the teachers stayed in that same community. So the parents had interactions outside of the school with educators. And it was kind of like this thing where you better not embarrass me in front of such and such.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to see her at church. I'm going to see her at the store. You know, she's going to be talking possibly at church, you know. So I wish we could get back more to more of that community style of, you know, education. But right now we're just trying to get teachers that are qualified, really, you know, that want to partake in this adventure of education with sometimes low pay, now having to be security, and now and possibly more hostile environments. I mean, just look at the number of school shootings. I mean, it takes a unique individual to want to go into education now, right?
Yeah,
So
it does.
hats off to all teachers that are in the schools, and I wish that we could get you more money and more resources. So, put that on the ballot box. You know what I mean?
Yeah. TG, they bring it up that they were the lowest pay, but yet they have to do more.
Yeah, I'm not going to name and blast the school district that I'm talking about, but I've heard of school districts at some point, teachers even being able to qualify for food stamps.
Yeah.
So you
I
think
heard the
about
same
that.
thing.
Yeah, you think about that for a second, right? You go to school, you go to college, you most likely have some school loans, right? And you have to, while teaching, which if you're a really good teacher, most of those teachers go out of pocket for things for the kids. So they're actually paying to work because and not able to sustain their own lifestyle by having to go on food stamps. So I think education reform we're really gonna have to take a look at. I don't know. Get on Betsy DeVos too much back in the day, but I don't think that education, at least public education, got the shake that it should have, under the previous administration. And I think I don't want to just beat up the previous administration. I think teachers need more support, period, based on what they're going through and what they have to go through and what we expect of them.
Yeah. So I was seeing another question came in. We do have another one pertaining, and you brought up the school district. one person text me and say, how do you find a good school district when you're moving? You want to move to a good school district. Before, it was the neighborhood you want to move into to make sure it's a safe neighborhood. Now they want to know what school district is safe. And that's a tough question to answer.
Well, define safe, right? It depends on what threats you're talking about. So even some of the so-called safe schools have other issues that don't show up on paper, right? So you just find out as you get there. But it's definitely a time now when you buy a house and you have kids. A lot of times people are purchasing homes, thinking about where they're going to be going based on the school district reputation and the outlets and opportunities that school system provides. But how do you find? You have to do your research and find out from folks in the community. If you're in the military, they have what's called a school liaison officer that you can kind of talk to, and hopefully that school, and most likely that school liaison officer is going to be able to tell you some things about the district and what's going on and which schools you should be focusing on if you're not going to go with the school that's on base if one is provided. So military folks have some advantages, and really it's so much information out there on the internet, really, in terms of what school districts are good. There's sites, there's places, there's people that you can reach out to get that information, but you got to do your research, right? Not just have it delivered to you. You got to do your research and find out what are the good school districts, what are the matriculation rates to college that a school has, what kind of scholarships. I pay attention to that when I go to a graduation, how much money those kids are able to get for scholarships and things of that nature. That kind of reflects on the school and the focus on getting them prepared to go to the next level, right? So
yeah. So wow, looking at a different education, things are just changing so different now on how you raise your kids. Because, like I said, there's a lot of things out there for them. You said it last week. Take the phone, the tablet, the internet away, because that's persuasion by itself.
yeah, well, I want to say, it's okay if you're monitoring your children adequately for them to have access to some of those things. But I want to get what I'm saying by take it away. I'm talking about don't let your child sit there all day, all night, all and unmonitored on these devices. There's things that you just would be surprised they're getting through the parental control. So you still have to, take a look at how much time they're on it. Try to get them to, again, like we were talking about earlier, those social opportunities to get out and do things like sports. Even if you're homeschooled, do things like sports. There's all kinds of sporting organizations, theater, whatever, is out there, but you have to do the research and find those type of social outlets for your children. But, when I did suicide assessments and homicide assessments for one of the hospitals here, behavioral health hospitals, that's one of the things 90% of the time I took away. What I would recommend that the parents took away is the cell phone for a while. And the numbers went through the roof in terms of them getting better because they were able to focus on social skills and not live in that artificial world that we call social media now.
Yeah.
So the facts are out there. Plus, I've seen so many kids destroy their future or put some serious challenges, I'll put it like that, by putting stuff online, or putting stuff out there, and they think that stuff just disappears. Well, it doesn't. A lot of colleges do that social media search, and I'll tell you, it happens more often than people know. The kids have got accepted to school, get accepted to different programs, and then that social media search pulls up stuff, and they get, their admissions denied or whatever. So it's a shame, and some people have gotten, I know some students that have gotten criminal charges by things that they posted online, so, if you're not watching your kids, they could be destroying the future that you're trying and hoping for them to get because of something irresponsible that they put on out there that now can cause them to, be called in. And you don't want the police knocking at your door because your child put something in their room that they didn't think was going to have some serious consequences. And that happens a lot.
Yeah. When you talk about social media, you're right about that, because nowadays, getting into college and getting a job nowadays, they're doing the search for social media.
Yeah.
And what they don't get, what they put out there stays out there. It doesn't go away.
Stays out there and can be pulled up. Even what's that? I think it was Snapchat that people used to use back in the day. I don't know if they're still using it. They thought that when they put something out there for a second, it just disappears and nobody can pull it up again. That was one of the things I used to work with kids. And no, you put it out there. And I know of a specific situation that happened here in San Antonio where a kid thought it was cute to put a airsoft gun on in a backpack and take a picture of it in Snapchat. And that, what they don't understand is, yeah, you put it on Snapchat, it disappears in a minute. But if somebody takes a picture of what you posted, they got it, right? And this person ended up, was a senior and ended up getting arrested his senior year. And to show the delusional mindset a lot of these kids are in, he actually thought that he was going to graduate with his class, right?
I remember that.
Yeah. That was his question. Not, am I not worried about, am I about to go to jail or, prison or whatever the case may be, but he was worried about, is he going to graduate with his class? And not even connecting the dots of how serious bringing a weapon to school, a BB gun or not, a gun is a gun when it comes to, the law and especially the school that that individual was at. So, you really have to gauge if your child is responsible enough to have unsupervised time with a cell phone, and if you're not popping up and checking and seeing what's going on, and if your child is acting out in other ways, not responsible, not being able to be trusted at home, then, you have to make those type of decisions for your child. They may not be ready to put their future at risk. You may not be ready for them to put their future at risk by giving them a cell phone and just leaving them unsupervised.
Yeah. Since you brought that up, somebody sent me something the other day. It says, you can't help people if they don't know what reality is.
Yeah, I think,
And
yeah, we
what
talked
you
about
just
that last.
said
Yeah.
hits the point right there.
Well, I think where we're at right now, which is kind of crazy, is that we have the responsibility of helping people find reality, right? And reality looks different for everybody, because what is reality, right? Reality, uh, in a lot of senses, is relative to a person's experience and culture, and what's my reality, what's your reality, what's our reality is different than some other folks that don't have some of the same challenges and obstacles and things of that nature. So, again, that conversation that we had about not being so polarized and just talking to your circle of people is going to help you get a better grasp on reality, the true nature of reality, right? Of understanding differences of opinion and this, that, and the other. But, we've got to get past, this delusional sense of listening to just who we listen to, so we can figure out the mindset of other folks and, hopefully educate them if they choose to hear it. But the question is now, do people choose to live in reality, right? There's a lot of people that seem to choose to follow narratives that aren't based on reality, right? Thus the name, like things like the big lie, right?
Yeah.
I think there is a reality there, in terms of the last presidential election. But why is it that so many people still think in this day and age that that wasn't a fair election, even though there was no evidence, there was no, there were investigations done, all the cases were thrown out by judges, that were Republican, Democrat, whatever, they threw all those cases out. But people are still willing to follow a narrative because of, wanting to believe what they want to believe, and following people like, I'll put his name out there, Bannon. He played a very important role in shaping the mindset that people have, not based on fact, but based on what? Fear and phobia.
Yes.
And now we're finding out even greed was a part of his motivation, right? Because the Japanese, I think it was the Japanese folks that he got all that money from, riding around in a yacht, giving out the strategies of the president. The strategies of the president is coming from somebody that's an advisor. And he even tried to evoke executive privilege as if he's the president, right? And even President's Council was like, no, we're not even going to do that. But he, so we talk about that entitlement, right? And we talk about being able to get away with things because of your ethnicity. This man, a civilian, was talking about at some point being protected by executive privilege that he doesn't even have, nor could be used in that way, right? Yeah. So that's the stuff that you got to look at. If you're following somebody delusional, what does that say about you? If you're listening to somebody delusional that doesn't live in reality, what does that say about you? What does that say about your mindset, right? And if you could vote for somebody that is clearly delusional, what does that say about you and you being responsible as a citizen? So we beat up our politicians all the time, but I'd say, they're only a reflection of our mental illness, right? What we allow them to do, or our ignorance, right? So if we have these fears and phobias that supersede our morals and values, then we get people like what we've had in leadership. Yeah. So it starts with us. It starts with conversations, and people to take the time to listen to me and you, kick knowledge back and forth, and then think, okay, well, they're way off, or we're on, form an opinion, and then be willing to have your opinion scrutinized. But don't tell me your opinion, base it with some facts, base it with some history, base it with some vision, but you got to be in a certain place to do that. You got to be able to, sustain yourself, your family, before you can start thinking. It's basically Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're at that lower rung, you're just trying to survive. And you're looking at anybody and everybody that got more than you, and you're trying to figure out how they can do it, and how you can do it, and how you're going to make it. How you going to pay these bills that are going up and higher and higher with inflation and all that type of stuff. And we talked about that a little bit last time, right? But we still have to figure out a way to be a visionary. People, nothing that we have going on now is new. right? We've gone through depressions, we've gone through recessions. Well, I won't say nothing we've gone through is new, but it's new that we've ever had a president that could be so blatantly above the law that right now is being laid out the full extent to how delusional we were as a country to let this man still be in office. But the question is, we got to ask why. How did that happen? How do people like that not just get, but are able to stay in office? And what does that say about our systems? You know?
Yeah.
It was a time when we had more of a moral compass in this country. And I've heard somebody say it best, you know, what Nixon did back in the day, and he had to leave office. They were like, hey, no, you know, Watergate cannot be the standard. You know what I'm saying? What's happening now? What went on January 6th and before January 6th? All the things that were going on there. I mean, to be impeached twice and still be able to stay in office, to do something like January 6th. And look, he was impeached twice before January 6th, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't deal with the problem, it's like anything else. It gets worse. And then you have situations like January 6th, and you've got people like Bannon dumbing the people down, you know, and feeding their phobias so they can project another agenda. And the real question is, what's the real agenda? What's really the goal for Trump and all that? And you know, some of us know, some people don't think we know what the real agenda is. But let's talk about what you think that real agenda is for Trump and the ultra conservatives and all that. What do you think that real agenda is? You know, it may be some of the Herschel Walkers, and rest in peace, I guess, Herman Cain's, can see really what they celebrating and trying to be a part of. You know, I think you need to be careful. You know, don't go out in the woods with them. You know what I'm saying? End up strange fruit. You know, you better take a look at what's going on. And it's amazing to me how these same folks continue to reshape hatred, reshape ignorance, and making it attractive. How is that attractive? You know, saying that demonizing a whole other group of people. How is that attractive? You know, I don't know. I guess I was raised a little different.
Bringing to that point, I watched it the third time. And so I watched it the other day when you brought up Shaping Who We Are by Jeffrey Robinson.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
He sat back and said in the 1800s, they didn't like slavery, the word in there. So they changed it, but then gave another 20 years to have slavery before it was illegal.
Right.
Well, here in the state of Texas, they want to take the word slavery out of history book and name it something else. You know, the truth is out there. There's not one truth. There's truth as Americans, Black Americans, what they went through. They just want to push us to the side like nothing really never happened.
Well, I mean, you know, what's the reason for it? You know, what's the reason why they're trying to whitewash history? You know, trying to dumb it down. You know, there's a reason for it, and there's a danger with that too. We're starting to see some of the same things that went on back in the day, because a lot of us aren't aware of the techniques and the tactics that people used back then to try to keep us oppressed. So yeah, and then so many people now are becoming more conscious and demanding more rights. So they're looking at, well, wow, how did this happen? It must be these books, must be these, you know, these teachings, you know, you're too aware of history, or you're too critical. Well, did it happen or did it not happen? And if it happened, what are the offshoots? What are the things that came about because of that? And again, until you know the truth, you can't ever really progress, because there are people that are out here that have a different truth than the narrative, the American narrative, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, you got to think about it. When did you know about Juneteenth, right? I didn't know about Juneteenth until I was an adult.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't know about it till I moved to Texas.
Right. Well, I mean, and then going down to Galveston, then I found out exactly where Juneteenth actually kicked off and the history about it. That's something that we should know because there's a narrative around those historical facts that point to some of the issues that are going on to this day. We're still celebrating freedom that we don't fully have, but at least we're not in chattel slavery, right?
Yeah.
And we've had this discussion. I had this discussion in college, right? Some people, we're called Black, African American. Well, for me personally, I like African American, right? And the reason I say that, some people are like, why do you, say African American? You've never been to Africa, right? Well, you got to think about it. My culture, my history did not start here in the United States. And we've got to understand that, when you don't allow yourself to be called, or at least respect the term African American, you're denying the history of the Middle Passage and how many people died to even get us on the shores of this country. So that would be just like, to me, forgetting some of the folks in the Holocaust, right?
Yeah.
And there are efforts to hide what happened in the Holocaust too, right? There are people that say, oh, we've heard it before. There's people out here trying to say that the Holocaust didn't happen. So what was going on in Auschwitz? What was going on in Dachau? These concentration camps. They weren't camping out and having fun. They were getting exterminated. It was genocide. So what happened to us? Obviously, there were offshoots and there were things that it was a genocide. It was a genocide that was in some ways worse than the Holocaust because it's still ongoing. So yeah, we got to talk about it. We got to talk about this narrative. And then more importantly, to talk about it and understand, we got to do something about it. We got to do something about it within the community, and we got to do something outside of the community. We have the ability to excel and exceed and move forward and do things, but we got to first understand the situation and how we got here and then figure out how to build and what we've done right to get here. It's amazing what we've been able to do as African Americans in this country, considering the hurdles, the intentional hurdles put in front of us.
Yeah.
Like Maya Angelou said, still we rise. You know what I'm saying? But we have to continue to do that based on our knowledge and ability and strategy, that's effective. And like we have a circle. I mean, we don't talk just on this radio show. We have an agenda, me, you, our circle, right? And we're going to be laying more of that agenda out, but once you get to a certain level in life, have a certain level of success and income, you don't hold it just to yourself. We have to teach other people, other generations, the next generation, how to become business owners like ourselves, how to have leverage in this country. And then try to get people further than us, than the younger generation, further than where we are. I was watching an interesting interview with Jay-Z. Now, obviously, I don't agree with everything about how Jay-Z started, right? And I think Jay-Z wouldn't agree with a lot of how he started. But you got to talk about, there was an interview he had with Kevin Hart. I think everybody needs to see that. It was brilliant for him to talk about, yes, he's a billionaire now, but he's trying to give the template to the Rihannas and the other artists out there so they can become a billionaire quicker than he did it. And then they're supposed to pass that information on. So we got to teach how to build wealth. We got to teach how to build strategies that are effective so that we can start controlling the destinies of our own communities and putting our own politicians up there and holding other politicians accountable, right? But until in this country, the moral of the story is you got to get yourself together financially. And we can do that as a community once we identify ourselves as a community and try to support each other. That's one of the reasons why I'm on this show. I'm supporting you. You're supporting my practice. That synergy that happens, that's how we make a difference. That's how we make a change. And right now, I have a waiting list. I'm not taking any new clients, right? But haven't taken new clients for a minute with all the things that's going on, trying to train some new therapists to come in behind me, right? But once you get to that level, you got something to say. But now here's the other thing, right? People have to know who to listen to.
True.
Right? Rest in peace, Kevin Samuels, funny guy, right? Did some misogynistic stuff, whatever. But you're listening to a man who was a sensationalist, right? He was an entertainer that had some facts. He had some interesting things, but the man wasn't married, nor was he licensed. He got some interesting points, but why are you listening to somebody that's designed to entertain you versus somebody that's licensed with experience that could actually help you navigate, that's been married for maybe 15, 20 years? You should always wonder, if you listen to somebody that's never been married on how to be married and just get it from one of these textbooks, they may have some good facts. But me personally, if I'm looking for a therapist, I'm looking for somebody that's been married for a while. I've been married for about 19 years. I might have something to say about marriage, more than just what's in the book, on love languages or whatever. Yeah, we can talk about love languages, but where does, the book knowledge and reality, you better figure out how to bridge the gaps, because the books can't tell you everything. The theories can't tell you everything, but you at least need to have the book training, the license, something, other than just your opinion on what your grandparents used to do to make it, right? You got to mix that up. So know who you're talking to, make sure they're an expert, not just somebody that sounds good, somebody that, just there for entertainment. So we mix our educators with our entertainers a lot,
I have a question from a lady in Normal, Illinois. She says, I am a white woman and I'm trying to define what entitlement is. She said, I worked hard from the ground up and I'm making it as I'm going along, but I just can't imagine people being entitled. Can you clarify more about what entitlement is?
How can you, entitlement is those things that you assume and are yours and are not necessarily yours. Something you feel entitled to, and it's in the name. You feel entitled to something that is not necessarily a right of yours, or is dispersed equally to everyone else. So the people that, perfect example, are the people in January 6th felt entitled to walk down the street, walk into the Capitol, put a noose outside of the building, and be able to get in there. Now, we all know that if those people were of a different pigmentation, they probably wouldn't have made it up the street, much less to the Capitol building. So if you want to know what entitlement is, look at that. All those folks that made it into the Capitol, that's entitlement. Because I dare say, if those who are African Americans, Puerto Ricans, Asians, anybody else in mass, January 6th would have looked a lot different. So that's an example of entitlement. The fact that you can, you've seen all those little memes and things about the Karens, right? The Karens that call out things. Well, I'm giving a better example. I've got a family member. I've got an uncle in Dallas, right? He was building his property. He's a builder, and there were people that will walk on his property and just look around. Oh, what you doing? What you putting here? Because his house doesn't look conventional. So people felt entitled to walk onto his property, and while he's up there building, walk in his house, and that's what you're doing here. It's obvious what he's doing there. He's building something, right? And you don't own it. but you feel entitled because you can walk out, and I didn't work out that good for Mr. I don't want to say his name wrong. I believe it's Marbury that was killed for being on property, right? He was possibly looking at some property and ended up with him being chased down and killed by other individuals that felt that he should have been on the property, or maybe he was doing something wrong, right?
Yeah.
So there's a perfect example of entitlement there, right? You got an African American that actually was killed after doing something that some people feel that they could do it and there's no penalty. They could walk in that property, look around, and actually my uncle had lumber actually stolen from his property, but they felt they were entitled to it. Oh, well, you know, this black guy's building a house and it's bigger than our houses, you know, but I feel like we can go ahead and take some of this lumber out of here, right?
Yeah.
So that's entitlement. Feeling like you can take things away, or that you have the ability to inflict your will on another group of people based on the privilege of your culture, of your ethnicity, right? So that's entitlement, you know, if you want to define it. Now, a lot of people have had to work hard. You have to work hard to make it in this country, but some of us just have had a few more roadblocks than others to make it. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
And as a business owner, if you want to know what roadblocks are, talk to a successful or even attempting to be successful person of color in business. If you want to know about roadblocks and overcoming something, talk to one of these business owners that have made it past 5 years. And they'll tell you about entitlement and how they've had to compete against people that have had basically things given to them where you have to fight tooth and nail for every little thing that you've got. And then you still have to deal with unfair laws and practices that try to keep you from being successful. And we can talk about that. I've got a whole bunch of those stories and things that we can talk about. But the good news is you can still succeed, you know, and really, when you have a business that's successful and you've overcome those obstacles, you really got something. You know, you really got something, and then you need to be able to pass that down to other folks. You know, and that's for our community. But you know, and you need to talk to some folks who don't have some of those same entitlements that you think you do, so you can understand why you're entitled. So I appreciate that question, because you know, because that I appreciate all the questions. So thank you for all the questions. But I think that it's that conversation piece that you need to have. Talk to somebody different than yourself that you would never talk to, and find out what they went through, and you can maybe find out how you're entitled. I took my daughter out. We went out to dinner last night to a pretty upscale restaurant. And I tell my daughter things like, look around you. What do you see? And who don't you see? You're blessed. It's a fortunate thing. Mommy and daddy couldn't eat in restaurants like this when we were younger. And it took us a while. It took us to get education. It took us to, you know, and my daughter understands where she's at and how she, in terms of the social ladder, and how she got there. And in prayer, you know, a lot, listening to our elders, all that type of stuff is how we got into this position. And that's why you don't see a lot of people that possibly look like you, because they haven't made the choices and they haven't had the opportunities that we've had. And to appreciate that. Yeah. So we're teaching our daughter how not to be entitled, but to appreciate everything that you have, because it was a struggle. We're standing on the shoulders of somebody, right? Right behind me in my office, I have my grandfather, right? You know what I'm saying? When he got the keys from the only builder in Grand Rapids, Michigan, who would build a house for him and those in that community. And that was us breaking the red line in 1965 in Grand Rapids, Michigan, right? And I still own that house in Grand Rapids, Michigan. right, along with my house here, and understanding that if he hadn't done that, that might have shifted the reality and the expectation, the ability that I have, right? But not everybody has had that exceptional opportunity, and that came at a huge cost. They overcharged my grandfather, Dr. Franks, Mr. Triplett, all the folks at J.E. Adams, all those that, you know, bought that property up there. They overcharged them to try to keep them out. So there's a lesson to that. How did they get that property back in 1965? That was unheard of back then. For African Americans to purchase large piece of land in a city where they were usually kept out. But how you teach that lesson of entitlement is let you know, you've got to know what your people have gone through. And if you're doing something, be able to explain that to the younger generation so they don't have those entitlement issues, right? There's a lot of kids, if you're buying your kids everything, they've gotten everything and they don't understand the cost of that, you're creating the next entitled generation.
Yep.
You know,
so the point you just brought up about the house up there, Jeffrey Robinson went through the same thing, but he couldn't buy that house. But a white friend of his had a couple go buy the house and then gave him the house. That was the only way for him to move into that neighborhood.
That's right.
Neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell you, it's still the same nowadays in certain neighborhoods. You can't go to certain neighborhoods. You are blacklisted. Mm-hmm. No pun intended.
Well, pun intended, right? Well, you know, the thing is, you know, we still have things like sundown towns. People don't know what sundown towns are. You know, a lot of people don't know what sundown towns are. There's a lot of them here in the South. There's a lot of them up in the North, believe it or not. You know, and a sundown town is, if you're a person of color, you better have your butt out of here before the sun goes down, right? And people need to Google that and take a look. There's still an active list of sundown towns here in this country, right? So, you know, I think we just need to understand, think about the realities of what's going on in this country, and then we can start making some changes if we choose to. But if we're not willing to take a look and make the changes, no sense in complaining about it because you're not willing to do the work. That's my thing, you know, and I think I posted that after the Uvalde shooting, because I'm getting tired of people, you know, getting on social media and just posting stuff and ain't doing nothing about it. Do something about it. You know, get out in the community, call your politicians and demand, you know, them to do something, or, you know, I'm going to actively try to get your butt up out of that seat until we get some action, you know, leverage your income. You know, if somebody's not, you know, doing what you need to do, or you're not treated a certain way, then you let those folks know what happened and you take your money elsewhere and let other people know about it. I think we had an incident with one of the air conditioning companies here recently, right?
Yeah.
That you put on blast. They provided horrible service, right? You know, and you put them on blast, I believe, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, well, that's how you wake people up. You know, you affect that money, and then you start to wake them up. That's what I've seen. If I get treatment that I don't like, or you come at me, say something that you don't like, you're gonna get a call from my attorneys. That I don't have to say anything. You know, I don't even have to raise my voice. If you get out of pocket and I get tired of dealing with you, you're gonna talk to my attorneys, and they're coming for you. Say something against my brand, say something against my name, and watch what happens to you. Now, you can have an opinion about me. I'm not running for office. I don't care if you like me or not, right? I'd rather have you respect the credentials I have on the wall and the ability I have in my profession. So me being liked, I'll long stop caring about that. What I care about is being effective. And that's what I'm going to try to be to the day I leave this earth in whatever I do, right? And if that's, and learning my craft, and I continue to always try to learn my craft so that I can continue to be effective, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
So you bring it up that people talk about Uvalde all the time. I have this organization that I teamed up with called All God's Kids. We're going down to the valley on Sunday,
Outstanding.
and they got this thing called Christmas in July, where they got donation of bikes, money, and toys for the kids. They even got Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus coming down, and we're taking pictures with Santa Claus. So that's a cause that we're doing. See, they talked about it, but they're being about it too. They want to give back to the community. If they could put a smile on the kid's face just for a couple of hours, it's worthwhile in doing it.
Yeah, I want to commend you, man, for what you're trying to do and what you're supporting. Uvalde has a very painful stain on it right now, and those kids need hope. Those families need hope. It's coming out now. You know how bad that situation, how botched that situation was, and you know I think people just have to understand something, right? When you're dealing with a life and death situation and kids are being killed, I don't care what type of training you have. That's a difficult situation. And I know that people are pointing the fingers at the law enforcement saying they should have rushed in, they should have did this, they should have did that, and they want answers. And I get it. I mean, we do have to, unfortunately, now this is a part of our reality where law enforcement now has to know what to do in those type of situations. But you know what? It's not clear cut. You know, I think the situation has to be dealt with before we end up in situations like that. But now we're going through, we're sharpshooting and asking for accountability. Well, the person that's accountable the most was killed in that event. So I just watch all this stuff, and yeah, we have to, you know, try to figure something out. But I just feel bad for just the whole situation, right? But more importantly, the kids that now have to understand that this is a reality. That school, even school, is not safe. You know, and we've had that reality for a long time, coming from some of our communities. School wasn't safe, right? But it was for a different reason, right? It was maybe because of some of the folks who were at the school that were in wrong things or making bad choices or whatever. Now we have people that are homicidal lunatics that are well armed. And I just want to point this out, right? Like I was going looking at the store the other day, and I saw the M16 for sale. Well, actually, it was an M15, and it had a suppressor on it. And I was just like, yeah. I'm not going to name the store, but I looked at it. I'm not, with all this going on. This store has, not only does it have the M15s for sale, which, you know, this is Texas, so, you know, you can get pretty much everything. But I particularly thought this was interesting that they had the M15 with a suppressor on it that you could purchase. I could have walked out of there with that. And the selling point was, oh, and the suppressor doesn't have any numbers on it, so it's not traceable.
Seriously.
So I'm sitting there going, what would be the motivation for you to have a silencer on an M15 and an untraceable suppressor? And that can be sold to just any civilian that's of age. So now, if you put that in the hands of an active shooter, he's now able to shoot and have more of a suppressed sound, possibly have better aim with a military grade weapon. And you can sell that over the counter, right? And that's our freedom, right? That we could do that. I just sat there shaking my head like, wow, this is what you can buy? It just out here in the open like that. Yeah, that and worse, you know? So, you know, we to highlight the problem, we just gonna have to get a lot better with our mindset and what we're trying to do. There's no excuse for an M15 with a suppressor to be able to be sold over the counter anywhere. What's the application for that?
War.
More than war.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more than war. If you got a suppressor on a weapon like that, you up to doing, you possibly up to doing no good, right? And yeah, war, like if you try to take out an enemy in mass in a combat situation, yeah, but how often does that happen here in the United States? Right? Well, in fact, I guess I shouldn't ask that because we know how many times active shooter situations are happening in the United States, but we're giving the folks the weapons to do that. The opportunities to do that, so.
Well, that's crazy.
Yeah,
you go
blew
ahead
my mind, man. I should have took a picture of it. I know I should have. I might go back there and take a picture of that, and we can show it to our viewers that this is part of the problem. You know what I'm saying?
I remember when I moved to Texas, and I noticed that everybody had a gun rack in their pickup truck and had their shotgun in it. Even kids would be able to drive to school and had it on there, and there was never no problem. I'm trying to figure out what happened between then and now where you can't bring a water gun to school.
Well, you know what happened. How many school shootings has it been, since now and then, right?
Yeah.
Hundreds, right? So heck yeah, if I see somebody pull up into school and I'm taking my daughter back to school or whatever, and I see somebody pull up with a shotgun, we're gonna have a problem now because we're not in that time. You know what I'm saying? And I think I think it's pretty much the law that you're not even if a concealed weapon isn't allowed on school grounds. But the people that we are most concerned about don't care about that law. They come in, and when they come on the school grounds, they're coming to do harm, right? Unless they're law enforcement or whatever. So everything is up for discussion, I think, now in terms of what we're gonna have to do, because the last mass shooting, and it was in Indianapolis here a little while ago.
Yeah.
Right. How did that end? Right. It ended by a civilian taking out the active shooter. And maybe I hate to say it, maybe that's where we're headed. That's happened down here a few years ago at one of the malls down here. Actually, it was a mall that I responded to in a situation. And the civilians took out the people that were that had killed at least one person inside the mall. A civilian.
Wild.
So you got to think about it. Is that what we're doing now? Not just teachers, the civilians are now going to be expected to protect ourselves. So then, if that's the case, we got vigilante justice and all that stuff. You can already see the problems that are going to come from that. So we got to make some changes, man. We're at that point where we're going to have to make some changes. It's not going to be something we can continue to push the ball down to next generations to solve it. We're going to have to get in the game and put our big boy pants on and force our legislators and to make some better decisions in terms of protecting us and us protecting ourselves.
Well, the ones you talk about that's in there, Congress and Senate, I still believe in my heart that they have mental health issues by decisions that they make. That doesn't make any sense, common sense. And they don't even have that, but they know how to raise that money.
Yeah, well, Ron, I guess what I'll say to that is, I don't think they have a mental health issue. I think they have a morality issue, right? And I think we have the mental health issue for allowing them to get up there and to stay up there, right? Because they'll only do what we allow them to do. So, I think we talked about that last time. We get these politicians up there, they promise us the world, when they get up there, that magically they can't do anything, right? Or they do the opposite of what we ask them to do. So is that them or us that needs to change? I think it's both, but it starts with us. They got to know that if they get up there and they don't do what they're supposed to do, they won't be up there. Whoever is stopping them from doing what they need to do won't be up there. But we've got to have the vision, right? And I think I talked about that last time, and I don't want to get into it too much more, but I do want to say, you've got to have the vision to know what they need to be doing. And we're still figuring that out amongst ourselves because we're listening to, I think, the real crazy people like the Bannons, right? They have podcasts that have millions of people that are following this fool to whatever horrific vision he has for the country. And I dare say that's not the vision that we have, right? But they're listening because their fears and their phobias and all that stuff are being fed by this guy. But he's playing them. He's playing them. You know, I think the president, his base, he's telling them what they want to hear. But is he really going to be able to deliver what he's talking about? Or really, is that even his goal to deliver what he's talking about? So we got to look at, you know, what do we want as a people, and, you know, and part of a vision. Now, we may not be able to agree on everything, but there should be some common ground things that we all agree on. And then figure out how to move forward and make those things happen. So,
well, moving forward, I say November 8th, vote. I can't say that any more clear.
Yeah.
Vote.
We got some things that we definitely got to deal with on the ballot box this time. You know, if you're not, as they say, woke now, then I don't know if you're gonna wake up. You know, you're gonna have to vote and keep voting. And I hear the argument, right? Well, none of these politicians do what we want them to do, and I've just said it a second ago, right? But if you stop voting, what do you think's gonna happen? They're going to continue to stop listening. So we got to continue to show up en masse. And that's the reason why we're having the opposition that we have now, because we showed up en masse and got Trump's butt out of there. And now they're trying to rewrite history, call it a lie, call it a scam. But America showed up. We flipped states that we should not have been able to flip. And that woke folks up. But we got to keep waking folks up. And we got to keep pushing the narrative and why we're pushing the narrative.
Right.
You know, these are just small steps that have to happen in the country to be awoke. We have to have a balanced and educated populace. And I don't know if we're ever going to be completely balanced, but we should be able to find common sense. We should be able to find reason and at least move away from hatred of other classes of people and other races of people. We should be able to move away from that in this day and age in 2022 if we're listening to the right people and listening to the right moral compass and judgment. And if we're not, we're going to see more of this. You know, if you're not willing to change what Michael Jackson said, if you're not willing to change a man in the mirror, then you're not going to change. The country's not changing and the politicians aren't going to change. They're a reflection of who we are as a people. Yeah. So we need to point the attention to ourselves. Ask yourselves a question. How much time do you spend actually researching, reading, thinking things through, not just cutting on the news and let them telling you what to think? What's your vision for the future? And then what are you doing actively to pursue it? What are you doing actively to teach our youth? And some of these folks, I don't even want them teaching our youth. Stay away from the kids if your mind isn't right. You know what I'm saying? You know, we don't need to continue to perpetuate. You know, if you're not self-examining yourself, you know, definitely don't go and take that to the kids. We don't need to continue to perpetuate that mindset. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So,
well, at that note and point, it's about that time. Hey, I appreciate the questions that came in today.
I do
Keep them rolling in. Matter of fact, we're back here next week, week after that. We got the Impact Hour with Joseph Lee here on WSAN Radio. Joseph, we appreciate the time and your knowledge on things and being right at the point. we appreciate that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to do this, and thank you for all the questions that have come in, and for all the folks that have kind of started watching the show. Definitely want to hear from you guys what your input is. So please keep the questions coming. We'll try to field them and try to answer them the best that we can, and push the conversation forward. And I think that's what we need to do, is talk, communicate, and understand each other. And I think that'd be a big help.
All right. Well, thank you, Joseph.
All right. Thank you.
See you next week.
Yeah, bye-bye.
All right.